Hi, parents. I wanted to talk to you for a couple of minutes to share with you some of my thoughts about second quarter assessments for the children. We were informed at the end of this last week that the second quarter is going to be ending on December 22nd and that we should have our report cards completed by that day. Typically, this is something that happens in January, and I may start assessing something like how high the children can count during that last week before Christmas, or maybe a couple different items. And then when we get back to school in January, I start to assess things like the letter ID, the sound ID, and the deeper items. And at the same time, we start doing our standardized assessments, the NWEA. But those things are now going to take place. I shouldn't say those things. The NWEA is not going to take place until into the third quarter. And then if things stay like they were in the past, it will be again in the fourth quarter. This is creating a little bit of a thought dilemma as to where I'm measuring where the kids are at. I believe that this quarter is going to be close to 30 days, and if I understand correctly, next quarter is going to be about 60 days. So you can see you're comparing different amounts of time and what should be accomplished during that time. Now, added to that is also what should the expectations be while we're under our remote learning. Of course, we're hoping that the children will learn a similar amount of material, but the reality of that is not happening for all of the children. So it's difficult to understand how to mark the children as far as whether they're achieving, satisfactory, progressing, or areas of concern. As some of the teachers and I have talked about this, some have said, well, we can say we know if a child is progressing or if they're having an unsatisfactory situation. So some teachers are going to pretty much have most children, yes, I do see that I can say they're progressing, but whether or not they've achieved a satisfactory amount of mastery of the different concepts, we don't necessarily have evidence of. If we see things that we're very concerned about, we can also, I'm concerned and I can tell you why I'm concerned. But then taking that view completely also concerns me because as a parent, I know that I looked forward to seeing when my child was actually also achieving things, and to think of their report card as the best you can really do is to say they're progressing might be misunderstood by some parents or be frustrating to them. It also leaves me thinking, well, how am I to say your child's only progressing when you're standing over their shoulder day after day and you may see more evidence than I can see? So those are some of my thoughts that have gone into how do I do assessments, how do I mark report cards, and what's the best way to do that. The things that I do, so number one, I do know that I'm unsure of how to do this to the standard that I believe is what I would like to do, that I can stand by my judgments of how the children are doing. Secondly, I do still believe that it is important to have some data collection so that not just for this quarter, but as the children go through, we can see how their growth was coming to be. And what I mean by that is if we get to third quarter, where I'm really hoping by the end of the third quarter, hoping and praying that we'll be back in person, I might see a concern then, or I might see something that I think is okay. But if I don't have reference points for that, it's more difficult for me to say, well, no, I see this child may have taken longer, but now they're really going ahead quickly. I might not be able to know that. So my outtake on that is I need to have some type of data for a reference point for the future. However, not being there by them, it really leaves me out of understanding what we call like teacher observations. For example, if they're doing assessment and I see them very much struggling over it, but then able to pull it together and persevere through it, it tells me something about their learning process. If I'm giving them a test and they just quickly breeze through it and then I look and most of them are incorrect, I'll know that there wasn't a lot of effort put in it and they just wanted to get done. With me not being there and seeing how the process is taking place, it makes it difficult for me to really understand what that means. So what I've come up with for now is that I'm going to try to still collect some data. The what I'm going to denote on the report card is going to be very open for interpretation, but I'm going to try my best to give a somewhat clear communication or somewhat clear communication of how I'm perceiving them. But, we're going to need to take everything with a grain of salt that's on the report card, whether it should really be higher or lower. What I'm more hoping to do is only score on the report cards in the area that I feel like I have some idea. There'll be a lot of boxes where I'm planning to leave them empty if I feel like I really just don't know how they're doing there. And then I'm planning to try during this next week to collect as much information as I can about the children. That being said, typically a teacher doesn't just observe a kindergartner the week before the assessments. You're constantly making judgments about how that child's progressing based on things you see every single day and then trying to get a whole picture. And that's something the district's been very clear about as they've been trying to teach us what their expectations are, that we look at standardized assessments, that we look at skills testing, written assessments, and then also our observations to come up with a picture of the whole child. And I strongly do believe in that, but I believe that we're a little bit handicapped in that area right now. So next week, during what would normally be what we're trying to do as reading groups, I'm going to try to get as much information as I can about the kids by using, one, some of these written assessments, and two, I'm going through those boom cards. Remember those? That company offers different assessments in the areas of the report card. What I really want to ask of you is if you see your child doing the boom cards, I'm going to try to tell them how to do it during the reading groups, have them do it, and then it'll give me a printout. I really want to ask you that you not help them with answers on it. If they can't hear or they don't understand how to do the card, you can say, oh, the card said to do this. An example of that might be they don't understand how to drag an answer over or how to proceed or click to go to the next answer. But please don't feel any pressure to help teach at that moment, because then I really won't understand where they're at. So if you stop during the test and you reteach them that concept before they answer the question, I'll think they're good. And because I have such a little, view of each child, that's more dangerous than usual. Now, that being said, as you are seeing your children do those boom cards, please do take note of things you see them struggling with, because as you know, I'm relying on you very heavily to help reteach a lot of concepts that they are needing to pick up. So after they finish the assessment, that would be a great time to reteach that to them, or say, hey, Mrs. Finkel, can you note that they're struggling with this? Can you do another lesson on that? Can you spend some time with them during a reading group? Or what can we practice at home for this? Similarly, if one of your kids' siblings or something, you notice that their kids are doing the boom cards and all of a sudden a sibling takes over, normally it wouldn't be a big issue if they're just doing it for learning. But if they do that on accident, just let me know and I can reset it, or just know not to really think, yeah, they're good with that. All right. If you have any questions, and as we go through this process together, I'm sure I may have some more questions and might change up a little bit of how we're doing this, but at least this gives us a starting point. All right. Thanks for listening.